In a 1988 SABC interview, Michael Roberts, who had already won 11 South African Jockey Championship titles, was asked which horse stuck out in his mind.
Sledgehammer, I think he was a great horse, best horse I've ridden. Great acceleration. I mean, he was like a machine. You didn't have to ride him, you just had to pilot him, steer him. He used to take you there, and all you had to do is just guide him to the right position, and he used to come through and go past him like they were standing still. I've never ridden another horse that had acceleration like this horse had. He was just a freak.
The Mighty Sledgehammer was everything you could want in a racehorse and more. He was precocious, talented and game, but best of all, he knew how to win and against the best. Sledgehammer was not only one of the most accomplished thoroughbreds to grace the South African turf, but was, and to this day, remains a legend of our game. Sledgehammer belonged to the flamboyant Cyril Herwitz, a beef farming mogul who operated under the name of Bull Brand. Herwitz acquired the striking colt whilst on a cattle buying expedition to New Zealand in 1971. Although not at the sales himself, instructions were to secure the colt regardless of price. This was also despite consensus around the ring that not only were the colt's knees bad, but his hocks were also out behind him.
I sell.
But on arrival in South Africa, trainer Fred Rickaby was immediately impressed, with many saying that he became besotted with the horse. It was not only Rickaby who saw something special, but Michael Roberts, who was an apprentice at the time.
When the babies used to come to the track, we used to pick our babies, and obviously I said, I want the liver chestnut, He just looked so majestic. And I remember we went around the turn with him, obviously long irons, and it was just phenomenal. And all he wanted to be is in front, so from day one, he was a leader, and he always used to lead the string out every single morning.
The highlight of his 3-year-old season was the Jockey International at Scottsville, which attracted riders from all over the world. The race had been sponsored by Herwitz's company, Bull Brand, since 1969, but 1973 was a big year.
The Bull Brand, that was for draw for mounts, and quite disillusioned because I thought, well, maybe somebody else is going to get onto my horse.
With Roberts still in his apprenticeship, Rickaby was hoping for his cousin Lester Piggott to draw Sledgehammer.
Mr. Herbert, let's have the first horse out and let's see who's going to ride him.
As sponsor, Herwitz drew the names.
I couldn't believe it. We're sitting there and, they were drawing out of the 2 bags. And here my name came out for Sledgehammer. It was such a fantastic feeling.
But with this caliber of horse and jockey, the 1973 Bull Brand International is going to be the toughest ever.
Going to a race, we had the champion, but I was a bit nervous because, I was still an apprentice, and I was riding with, with the international jockeys like Lester Piggott, Pat Hedry, Willie Carson, Joe Mercer, and then the Americans were there, and Fernando Toro, great jockey. So I was more worried about them than my horse.
And they're running, and Frantic Chief is one of the first to show on the inside. It's Frantic Chief, Tony Murray, with Piri and Cool Million going on now. And it's Cool Million, Johnny Sellers settling down in the lead now as they pass the 1400 marker.
The foreign jockeys, especially the Americans, they went off like clappers.
Outside is King's Pleasure. High Hearted's in behind them. Just behind High Hearted is Willie Carson on Piri, and then comes High Allen. Behind High Allen is Sledgehammer, and the back marker at the moment is Jamaican Music.
As all great horses, they can only accelerate at the top, I believe, for about 300 meters. I just had to time my run and just have the patience and the confidence, which I always had in Sledgehammer, just to wait.
And it's Canada and America at the moment as Totem Pole takes over from Cool Million. Totem Pole going in the lead from Cool Million in second, then comes Frantic Chief in third, then High Hearted and King's Pleasure and Piri on the inside. Just in behind them comes Sledgehammer, and behind Sledgehammer is Sun Monarch. They're coming to the 4 marker now, and it's Cool Million and Totem Pole fighting it out with Piri making good progress on the inside. Green Prince is making ground too, and Sledgehammer just in behind the leaders as they come up towards the 2 marker, and it's Sledgehammer who's come to the front now, with Fernando Toro putting in a great run on Jamaican Music, but it's Sledgehammer from Jamaican Music, Piri on the far side, and then comes just in behind them and putting in a good run is Lester Piggott on Sun Monarch, but coming into the final 50 yards now, and well clear is Sledgehammer from Jamaican Music.
The track was so packed with people. Actually, I think they closed the gates. They asked me to, to canter him down to the bottom, to the bottom stands. Then somebody out, from the infield came out with a hammer, and they handed me the hammer, and he said, "This is what you got. This is Sledgehammer." Yeah, so I had to canter down back home with a hammer in my hand.
But tragedy struck shortly before the Durban July.
He was odds-on favourite for the Guineas, small field. I think there was only about 9 horses in the race. And unfortunately, the horse in front of me snapped a leg and went down so quickly. And I was right behind him. I went right over him. And we had no chance. And, I ended up, in hospital. I woke up next to Roy Curling in hospital. And, because I can't remember a thing what happened. He actually somersaulted over this horse because as the horse went down in front of me, he actually turned sideways. I remember he lifting himself, trying to get over him, but, we just went straight down. With the one horse crossing over, brought down Roy Curling's horse as well, and he came over. It was a real mess. It was something that Stipes didn't want me to see because they said, it'll frighten you, It was, probably a miracle, when you see how a horse can fall like that and to come back, to perform at that level again, you know what I mean?
And perform he did. 1974 was a new year and became known as the year of the sledge. The colt had matured, he was big, imposing and muscular. Whilst the bull brand gave Roberts the greatest feeling riding against the best in the world, the Metropolitan was to be his greatest triumph.
The race is between elevation and Jamaican music, the money said, and this southeaster will aggravate Sledgehammer's lack of stamina, they said. And away they go, with Sledgehammer's gate sticking a little, but there's no truth to the rumour that Mace Roberts had to dismount and open it himself. Elevation about 7th, then wins the lad, Sabre, Chief Scout, and where's Sledgehammer? Well, he's out of the picture. Running about 12th, about 200 metres off the pace at this stage. Just behind Chief Scout, watch him. Here he comes, red cap, grey sleeves, night haven. Right to the right of the picture, moving up the field, slowly, surely on the far side, but quite confidently.
By the time I got in the straight, and you must remember this is down the old course, short running, I had elevation in sight and I only had about 2 or 3 lengths to make up on him. I just had to wait till we get past the 400. And when I pressed the button, we went past him like he was standing still.
At this stage, Sledgehammer's about 7th, and suddenly he goes into top gear. Coming on the outside of his field, he collars elevation, and still pulling out pace, away goes Sledgehammer to win by 2 1/4 lengths from a very gallant elevation. This is Fred Rickaby, Molly Reinhardt to you, and here he comes, led in by a very excited twosome, owner Mrs. Hurwitz and Miss Hurwitz. And Mr. Hurwitz, who's done so much for South African racing, eventually manages to get in a kiss edgeways.
Sledgehammer was voted Horse of the Year for an amazing season that an equine athlete rarely ever has. He won 13 feature races in 3 provinces, breaking 5 course records in the process. He raced a further 2 seasons before retiring to stud. Sledgehammer's 21 victories included 6 Grade 1s and 6 track records. Of those victories, Roberts was in the saddle 16 times.
I haven't seen a horse in the last 10, 15 years that was like Sledgehammer, with the acceleration and, he was so consistent at that top level. It was just phenomenal.
He also gave his followers a phenomenal ride. One fan captured it best in a letter to the press. Dear Sledgehammer, I'm writing to you on behalf of the South African public to thank you for all the glamour, excitement and colour you have brought to our sport. You are beyond doubt the equal in merit, courage and soundness of the legendary Sea Cottage. He was one hell of a horse, and so you are too.